Hi, welcome to my next video in my series about adult content creation. If you haven't already watched my previous videos, I've talked about taxes and finances, and then the one before that was about admin, so things like scheduling on social media and spreadsheets and how I manage my time and things like that. So if you haven't watched those yet, feel free to go back and watch those after you've watched this one. This video is going to cover collaborating with other performers and some of the issues and the ways to navigate some of that. This is probably one of the main questions I get when I meet new people who aren't in the industry. It's to do with how I find other people to film with and how that kind of negotiation about content and that whole dynamic, how it all works. There are a lot of things to cover under this one topic. Some of the things I'll be talking about are how I find people, how to reach out, some of the etiquette when it comes to actually being in the room with someone and filming with them, things like testing, model release forms, my criteria when it comes to deciding who to film with, a few other things to do with communication and general preferences I have in the industry, and probably a few other tangents that I go off on as I tend to do. As always, I really want to get your feedback about this. I think this topic in particular could have some controversial takes in it, and I'd be really interested to know, especially from other creators or people who are thinking about entering the industry or anything like that, whether you agree with my opinions about these things or whether your approach to it is completely different, and whether you think what I'm saying is not only wrong but problematic. Like, I would like to hear those comments about that and have a discussion about it, because I do think it's really interesting to hear how other people think about some of these issues. I think one of the things that really stands out for me when I'm filming with people is that there are a lot of different approaches people have to the industry in general and how people think of it when they come to filming and come to doing this as a job at all. For me, I really enjoy it. I think I've been incredibly lucky that I've been able to make a full-time career out of this, and I get to travel and meet lots of really lovely people, and I get a lot of enjoyment from the job. But at the same time, as I said, this is my full-time job. It's my sole source of income, and therefore when I'm collaborating with someone, my priority really is getting a good video out of it. Obviously, I also want to have a good time, and I want to make sure that the chemistry of the other person is there and that we both feel comfortable and all of that, which should come as standard. But at the same time, other people sometimes have an approach to it where it's more about hooking up with people and then having a camera in the corner of the room, just capturing whatever happens. And both approaches are totally fine. And also from an audience point of view, both of those can be appealing in different ways. But looking back on my content from when I first started, that kind of fly on the wall video where some of the angles weren't great or the lighting wasn't great or not much thought was put into making sure that everything was captured in a kind of aesthetic way. I feel like since then my content's come a long way, and getting used to what positions look good on camera and how to kind of prioritize the video quality at the same time as making sure that I'm enjoying myself has become a skill that I've developed over that time. For some people who have another job or work 9 to 5 and do content creation on the side, that might be less of a priority, and it might just be a little side hustle which they don't mind too much about how much money they make from it or the overall quality of the final product. This sometimes can create a little bit of disparity when two people are coming together with different approaches to the job, and I think it's something to try and be clear about beforehand. I would say in general, sometimes if I'm about to film with someone, then I can usually get a pretty good idea from their social media posts and their existing videos about what their approach is. And sometimes there does need to be some kind of compromise in that sense. But as a starting point, that can sometimes be a little bit difficult to navigate. I would say in general that now the market on adult content creation is getting a little bit more saturated. I would say that in my experience, people are putting more thought into ensuring that they're making good quality videos, even if they are only doing it as a side hustle, because it is quite hard to maintain this as a sustainable source of income. And although some people might be able to do that with the kind of fly on the wall style video that I mentioned, I think it's becoming harder and harder, and the standard and the expected quality of videos is getting higher. So we'll talk about how I arrange collaborations, how I meet people, and the kind of etiquette when reaching out to people. I will say that everyone has different approaches to this. I feel like I give this caveat in every video, but obviously, I can only talk from my own perspective, and everyone does have different ways of doing this. Not everyone will agree. Not everyone will approach this in the same way. So just remember that what I'm saying is quite subjective. The way that I organize most collaborations is through Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram. Mostly Twitter, but that's probably just because that's where I have the most followers and where I tend to make the most connections. But increasingly, Blue Sky and Instagram are also really good places to do it. It's also really good to get personal recommendations. So if someone that I filmed with and got on well with and thought was professional and a good person to film with recommends someone, then that's always really good. In general though, it's normally that I'll see someone in another video, or they'll see me, or I'll see on someone's profile that they're going to be traveling to London, which is where I live. Or I'll post that I'm traveling to another city, and then whoever sees the other person first will just reach out and say, "Are you up for filming?" That first message, personally, if someone sends me a message that just says, hi, how are you, I will ignore it because I don't know what that is. There tends to be quite a lot of spam on social media. And even if it's from a creator who seems quite verified and established, it might be that they have some agency running their account and they're using that creator's profile to try and reach out to other creators to try to get more people using their agency and things like that. I've had that before. There'll be messages from other creators saying, how's the content creation going? How's everything going over there? And what they're trying to do is just say, do you want someone to run your accounts for you? For me, the answer is always going to be no. And that's also why I'm not keen on those kind of initial messages that just say hi or hi, how are you or something like that. And why I tend not to reply to them, because I think if you're reaching out about a collaboration, I think the best way to go about it and the way I go about it is to be quite direct. If you're going to be traveling to the city where that person lives, saying, I'm going to be here on this date to this date, I'm free during these times, would you like to film? Or if you live in the same city, or if you're just reaching out to someone in general to ask if there's any interest there, I think being really clear and direct in that first message is the way to do it. Normally what I say is just like, hi, are you interested in filming together? I think that's clear enough. It is obvious what my intention is, and it allows the other person to continue the conversation if they would like. If there needs to be more in that first message, for example, oh, I see that you mostly film this kind of content. I'm really keen to start filming the same kind of content. Would you be interested in working together on this? Or something like that. I think something like that is good. Being a bit more specific and clear about why you want to film with them. Saying that you find them attractive or that you really like their content is also good. I would say keep it clear, relatively brief and direct. Aside from social media, another way to find creators to film with can be through external apps. There is one on Just for Fans called Finder. It's like Findr, which is Just for Fans' internal creator network. Although I will say that not everyone seems to show up on there, and a lot of people who do show up for me don't seem to be very active. So I haven't found it particularly useful, but I know that other creators have said that it can be. There's also an app called Player, Plaiir. I've only just made an account there, so let's see how that goes. Weirdly, I forgot to mention one of the main ways I organize collabs nowadays is very often through WhatsApp groups. If you're traveling somewhere, you can find local WhatsApp groups for creators, usually by reaching out to someone you already know from that city and asking if they know of any. I use these not only when traveling, but also within the UK, whether that's when I'm planning a trip up to Manchester or just connecting with people in London that I haven't met yet. Aside from being good ways to arrange collabs and find creators, depending on who's running the groups and how they manage them, they can often also be mini communities and support networks where creators discuss their work. In case it wasn't obvious from these long free videos I'm making about content creation, I'm really against any kind of gatekeeping when it comes to the sex industry. I love to see us all supporting and uplifting one another, so it's nice to see that play out within some of these groups. I mean, others are very quiet and just have the occasional message from someone about filming, but they all serve different purposes. I should talk here about rejection as well, which when it comes to content creation can be a little bit tricky. Obviously, most creators I know have very different approaches to this. Some people only film with people that they find personally attractive. Other people want to create a diverse range of videos, and the body type or the personal attraction level is less important. Of course, what it means is that some people won't want to film with you, and there could be a whole variety of reasons for that. It might be that they have a specific kind of content that they create and they only film with a certain type of person. And even if they find you attractive on a personal level, they don't create videos with your body type or whatever it is. And I mean, I have opinions about that. I think stepping out of your kind of pre-existing framework can be quite good sometimes, even if you think that your audience won't necessarily react well to it. I think that can be a bit of a self-perpetuating cycle sometimes, because if you tell yourself that you need to keep creating the same kind of content because that's what your audience expects, they're going to continue to expect it. I think a bit of experimentation can be nice. It's always good to mix it up and be creative and have fun with it. But that's a bit of a digression. I guess my point is that I don't think you should take it personally if someone doesn't want to film with you. There could be a whole range of reasons for it, and it's not necessarily about you. It could be about their content, but it could also be about you. It could be that you're not their type, and that's also fine. I think learning to accept the rejection side of it is just a part of reaching out to people in this industry, and it's really not a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. As a trans guy who is often reaching out to cis guys about filming, there are a lot of instances where someone isn't interested, and rejection can come in a whole range of forms. Sometimes that's just by not replying. And I would say that it's important to take a no reply as a reply. If someone doesn't reply when you've asked about filming, leave it. If they show interest and then go quiet, I think it's okay to follow up with a quick, are you still interested or something like that, just to check that the message hasn't got lost or something, especially if you're communicating on Twitter where the inbox can get a bit flooded. But in general, I'd say no response is no, and maybe just leave it at that. There are polite ways of rejecting people. Again, some people prefer no response. Other people prefer a polite no. Everyone has different preferences. And unfortunately, you don't know what that person's preference is if you're in a position where you're going to reject someone and say no to filming. It might be that they're upset by you not replying, but they might be more upset by a polite no. So that's just something you have to decide for yourself. It can be quite hard sometimes, I think, when I reach out to people and then project some of my own insecurities onto the reasons why they might not want to film with me. And that could be, is it because I'm trans? Is it because my body isn't XYZ? Because whatever it is. But I think the longer I do this, the longer I realize that it's really important to kind of put those things aside, because what one person doesn't like, someone else will. And something that someone doesn't like about me might be something that I really love about myself. And so I can't rely on other people for that. Also, if you're a trans guy reaching out to cis performers about filming, don't be apologetic. Don't approach it in a way of, not sure if you're into trans guys kind of thing. If you feel more comfortable doing that and couching it in those terms, then of course, go ahead. But my suggestion is to approach the situation and approach the conversation as if your transness is irrelevant, because for a lot of people it will be. For other people it will be new but exciting. Maybe this is a small point and maybe just a small personal preference, but I just think approach as if you're desirable, because you are. Obviously not to everyone, and people might say no or not reply, but just come at it from a position of, I have as much right to be in this space and be in this industry as a cis person. I'm as sexually desirable and as worthy as a cis person is in this space. I'm sure there are cis guys watching this who maybe also reach out with a little bit of something self-deprecating, something like, oh, not sure if you're into guys like me, something like that. And my advice to you would be the same, but obviously coming at it from a position of being trans, I just think I want to see more of us taking up space in the industry and being proud of ourselves and being confident in our own desirability. And I think part of that is in the way we talk about ourselves and the way we think about ourselves. Because obviously a no might not be based on the fact that you're trans. It might be that you're too hairy or not hairy enough, or too short or too tall or too fat or too thin. And there's so many things that people have preferences about which are just unpredictable. It also might be because you're trans. This might be problematic. It also might be that they have a genital preference, which personally, and I know this is a controversial view, I don't have a problem with. I think people have preferences about all sorts of things. And I don't think someone having a preference for a certain type of genital is necessarily a problem, as long as they don't make it into my problem or turn it into something transphobic or problematic. I think there's a very big difference between someone saying that they're a complete bottom and that they aren't keen on the feeling of being topped by a strap, because it does feel different. I think someone saying that is fine, but that's completely different from saying, oh, vagina, gross, I would never. I would say most of the time a genital preference can exist without being inherently problematic, but that it doesn't always need to be expressed. So if I reach out to you and say, would you like to film? And you think to yourself, I prefer a penis and my enjoyment of sex is very much based on there being a second penis in the room as a cis guy, I think that's fine. In the same way that my enjoyment of sex might be based on someone having a really hairy chest or a really big bum. That might be a complete deal breaker for me if that thing doesn't exist. And I think a genital preference is almost the same thing, but you don't need to necessarily tell me that. You can just say, hey, you're really hot, but I don't think you're quite my type. Something like that. That's fine. Thanks so much for reaching out, but I don't think we're compatible. That's fine. But yeah, try not to take it personally. Always just be polite to people. Think of them as real people. Remember, if you are speaking to someone on social media about filming together, that there is a real person on the other end of the keyboard, and that everyone has their own insecurities and things they feel uncertain about, and just try to be kind. Okay, so some other things that I like to have a conversation about before I get to the point of actually collaborating with someone are what we're both into and what we're actually going to film together. For me, all of that should be discussed before we film. I know some people aren't keen on the question of like, what are you into? What do you want to do? And that they can find it restrictive. For me, well, two things. One, I think when it comes to content creation, you're in a professional environment, you're filming a video. It's different from having a hookup where you might just want to go with the flow and see what happens. I think because you're filming, you need to make sure that you're on the same page. You're in a sort of business transaction, and therefore you want to make sure that you're both in agreement about what's going to happen. That doesn't mean planning out the video sort of second by second. It just means having a pre-existing framework for what the other person is interested in, what they enjoy and what they don't. Personally, even when it came to hookups, I would always prefer to have that conversation beforehand. And if someone says they're into everything, it's a red flag. It just suggests to me that they're kind of boring in bed. Like, do you not have any desires? Do you not have any preferences or anything you enjoy? If you're saying everything, it's the same as saying nothing, and it's a real turn off for me. My boyfriend watched this and told me that this bit sounded too harsh. I didn't know how to soften it, but this is me chiming in to say I didn't mean it in a bad way, just in a way of, in this job, please be prepared to be clear about what you want. It doesn't need to be a long bullet point list of yeses and nos, but just having a basic understanding of not only boundaries and hard nos, because obviously that's really important, but even just a few things that they really love, I think helps the video run more smoothly. For me, if I already know what they're into, then it's not restrictive. It actually allows for more freedom and enjoyment when the video starts, because I feel more relaxed knowing that we have that space to kind of play and explore within that existing framework of what we know the other one is into or not into. But it is also about boundaries. Again, if someone says they're into everything, I just don't think that's true. Of course, you're going to have limits and you should be able to communicate those and express those. If you don't feel like doing that in your personal life, if you're completely submissive and you just want to say, like, do anything to me, it's fine. Okay. But this is not a hookup. This is not your personal life. This is something professional. And as I said, this is sometimes where the disparity between the approaches of content creation can come into it. Because if someone is treating it more like a hookup and they just want to enjoy it and they say they're into everything, okay. But for me, this is my job. We're filming a video and I want to make sure that everything is done properly. I feel more comfortable when I've expressed my boundaries and what I'm into, but I also feel much more comfortable when I know what the other person's boundaries are and what they're not into and the things they really enjoy. Like, that makes me feel better on a personal level. So I would really suggest having that conversation at some point. Sometimes you can get an idea of what the other person is or isn't into from looking at their content, but I would really recommend having a little chat about it. For me, I literally have a copy paste list, which I know I said you don't necessarily have to have bullet points, but for me, just have a copy paste list. This is what I'm into, a couple of things that I don't do, and then at least they're clear. It also means that if you have a conversation about filming and then you realize that you're not compatible, at least that's happened before you're in the same room together. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of my criteria when it comes to deciding who to film with. For me, it's less about follower count. It's more about some other factors, although sometimes follower count can come into it. Obviously, if someone has a lot of followers and gets a lot of engagement on their posts, then it feels like there's more of a mutual promotion there. If there's a massive difference between the number of followers, then it can feel a little bit uneven. But for me, I've been in this industry for a while. My priority is more to do with getting a good quality video, which I can use for my pages, and we can promote each other regardless of how many followers the other person has. So what I would tend to look for is whether or not we're compatible. So I would look at the videos on that person's profile and see whether they're doing the kind of things that I would enjoy as well. I would look at the video quality. So have a scroll back through and just see what's the lighting like, what are the angles like, do I feel like they're putting thought and professionalism into the way they film their videos. If they had no other collabs on their page, then that would be a red flag for me. I know some people are just starting out, but it's good to see that they've had experience filming with other people in the past. I'm not really keen on being the first or second person that someone ever collaborates with for OnlyFans and other platforms. I think there are skills that come with that kind of experience, whether it's just understanding some of the etiquette of it, although you can be in the industry for years and still have bad etiquette, I think. But also just things like having an awareness of when you're having sex, making sure that the camera is able to capture everything. And as a more established creator, I don't want to be the person who's always having to move the other person or change the angle or be very aware of it. It should be a mutual responsibility. So I would have a look at some of those previous videos and just have a look at the quality of them. Obviously, for newer creators who haven't necessarily filmed very many collabs, I would also look at the solo videos and just see how they're filmed. So if you're just starting out and you feel like, well, how am I supposed to create good quality content when no one will film with me? Then I think starting out by doing some solo things and just thinking really carefully about the lighting and the angles, then that's a good place to start. Regular posting as well is really important. And that's something that I would also look at. If they haven't posted anything for the past few weeks, then that would be a concern as well, because I would question how seriously they're taking it. And although, like I said, I do film with people who just do it as a little side hustle, most of my good experiences have been with people who have a similar approach to me when it comes to the job. I also have a strong preference for creators who show their face. I do occasionally film people who don't, but it makes things more difficult. It can make the editing more complicated. Even if they wear a mask, sometimes there are things they are comfortable or not comfortable showing, and I find it much better when they're comfortable showing their whole face. And they also need to be verified and established across all the main platforms, especially OnlyFans, which is the one that I find the most trouble with when it comes to model release forms. In a lot of other cases, you can upload the form with the other person's ID and get the video approved that way. But OnlyFans, although they do have their own internal model release forms, I've had a lot of problems with them in the past where they don't get approved, even through OnlyFans. So I now don't film with people who aren't verified as a creator, at least on OnlyFans, but preferably on other platforms as well. I also mentioned there about model release forms. I might do another video that covers this in more detail, but one of my other criteria is that they fill out my model release form, which asks for all the basic details that the platforms require, and a photo of their ID and a photo of them holding the ID next to their face. This proves that they are obviously over 18 and that they consent to their video being used in this way. It basically says that we have an equal right to the footage, that it can be posted behind a paywall on various platforms, that there's a limit to the length of promo that can be shared. So that means that someone can't just post a whole video for free somewhere, and a few other basics about how the content is managed and posted. Obviously, sharing an ID can feel like quite sensitive data, and you are entrusting the other creator with that. For me, it's kind of a standard in the industry that we do share that with each other, and there's a mutual trust there. There has to be. Without that consent form and ID, a lot of the platforms won't let you post a video, and I think there is some merit in that because it proves that the other person is consenting. But sometimes it does limit the number of creators that you're able to work with because some people just aren't happy to fill out forms like that. And obviously that's completely up to them, and if that's how they want to do it, that's fine. But I would say as a creator, you should have a model release form. You should be asking people for them. Collecting ID data is a part of that. It's your responsibility to make sure you're storing that in a responsible way. But I think you should be prepared to fill out forms like that. What the form doesn't mean is that the consent can never be withdrawn, because although it says that the consent is given, it's 100% possible to withdraw that. It is a little bit thorny. I had an experience with a creator who was new, and this is actually one of the reasons why I say I'm not very keen on filming with brand new creators, because this is an experience that happened which I regret. We filmed together, and a few months later we were about to post a video, and a few days before it was due to be posted, he messaged me to say, I've decided the industry isn't for me. I'd like to withdraw consent. Could we not post a video, please? And obviously I removed everything, deleted the video, deleted all the scheduled posts, deleted the promos, went through all the platforms, and quickly edited and scheduled another video to replace that one. I mean, it's completely within his right to do that, but frankly, it was annoying because it's sort of difficult. My consent to having sex with this guy was based on the fact that we were making a video out of it, and that it was going to be posted, and that it was going to be something that I was able to use on my platforms. Without that, I would not have had sex with him. So yeah, it's kind of tricky because while he is within his right to do that, and of course, the only correct response to someone asking you to take down a video is to immediately take it down, I wasn't happy about it. I will say that there might be a number of reasons why you're not happy with a video being up. I think someone leaving the industry completely is the most valid, because you might want all of your porn to be completely scrubbed off the internet, and that's fine. I do think if you filmed with someone and you're just not particularly happy with how you look in it, it's within your right to decide not to post that yourself. But I would be very cautious about asking the other person not to post it for that reason. I think an outcome like that, where you're not being framed in an intentionally negative light, it's not as if anything humiliating has happened to you, you're just not particularly keen on the video. I think that's a part of doing adult content creation and something you just have to contend with. There might be videos that you're less happy with, or you feel like you didn't look exactly how you would want to in that video, but in my opinion, that's part of it. In that situation, I would not ask the other creator to not post a video or to delete it. I don't think that's fair. This kind of brings on to another point about the content in general, is that at the end of filming, both parties should have access to all of the footage and have the right to do whatever they wish with it. Again, if someone doesn't show their face and they want to cut out their face before they're willing to share it, I mean, I think that should be something that you trust the other creator to do. And if you're not sure, you can ask them to send you their edit before posting so you can have a look through it. But as a general rule, everyone should be able to access all of the footage. It's a 50-50 split. You have equal access to that, and then it's yours as much as it is the other person's. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I just want to say one more criteria that's really important to me is that the person who I film with has recent STI test results. This is a lot easier in London than it is elsewhere. I know it's quite difficult to get tested in certain areas of the country and the world. I'm going to do another video talking in more detail about sexual health, so I'll cover that completely separately. But I'll just say that when I film with someone, I always make sure they have a recent test result, preferably not older than 3 weeks. I get tested every 3 weeks as well, and I share my results with that person. And this is less of an industry standard than I think it should be, but one that's really important to me. Okay, so I mentioned there about sharing the videos equally. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the collab and just say, from the beginning, what's some of the etiquette? How should you behave? What should you expect from the other person? What should they expect from you? There are some basic things that would be agreed beforehand. For example, whereabouts you're going to shoot, how it's going to work, if there is going to be a cameraman, if you're going to hire a cameraman, if that's something that one creator wants to do, then it's normally their responsibility to organize that and pay for it. If it's discussed beforehand, that can be split, which is Also, a very common thing to do, you split the payment for the cameraman. If one person is booking a hotel and wants to split the payment, then that's also something that should be discussed beforehand. Essentially, if you're asking the other creator to incur any costs, you should be very clear before anything is booked or paid for that that's what you expect and that's what you're asking for, and make sure that they're happy with that. In the years that I've been doing this, I've been in situations where someone else has paid for a cameraman by themselves and they've managed all of that. Been in situations where I paid for a cameraman and not asked the other creator to contribute. And I've been in situations where we've split the cost 50-50. And it really just depends on the dynamic, what was discussed at what point, how one person normally does things, the existing agreement with the cameraman, if they have a pre-existing relationship with them and things like that. In general, I'd say if you're organizing the cameraman and it's a preference that you have and the other creator is sort of less concerned about it, then I think you should probably be prepared to pay for it yourself. But you could ask for a contribution. I mean, that's something to negotiate between you and the other person, but I think be open to all possibilities there. One other thing I forgot to mention here is that I often organize Skillshare camera swaps. So 2 creators will come around and we take turns being cameraman. A lot of guys don't like to film more than 1 video in 1 day, or they're not compatible with the other creator. But as a minimum, I film with them both and the other is doing the camera. This is good because it means we both get better quality videos out of it. But because it's a Skillshare and both parties are benefiting equally, no payment is exchanged here. General basic etiquette: be on time, keep the other person updated, obviously respect their boundaries, understand that consent can be fluid, it can change. Something that they said yes to over text might not be feeling right in the moment. A lot of this really just goes back to just remembering that the other person is a human being, they have a body that might be unpredictable. If you haven't met before, you're both in a new situation and they might be bringing previous anxieties or concerns to that situation which are confusing to you, but you just have to remember they're a real person. They have their own problems in the same way that you do, and just be kind. As I said, I think all content should be shared with all parties, but it might be that the person you film with really wants to do the edit and you're not bothered about having access to the raw footage, in which case that's fine, or vice versa, that's also fine. For me, generally, I always do my own edits. So if the other person doesn't want to do their own edit, then they'll use mine. No payment is exchanged for that. Again, that could be something you agree. If you pay someone else to do the edit and the other creator is happy to contribute to some of that if they don't want to do their own edit, that is a conversation that can be had. It's not something that I've ever encountered myself because I do my own edits and I'm going to do that regardless of whether or not the other person wants to use it. So I'm always happy to share my edit in that sense. I would always prefer to ensure that the other creator has access to the footage regardless. And as I said in my admin video, I normally upload everything onto Google Drive. And when I do my edit, I put it in the same folder. So that means I'll have access to all of the raw footage and eventually the edit when it finally gets done. That will all be in the same folder and everyone has access to everything. If you want to look through the other person's edit before they post it, again, that can be a conversation and most people are happy with that. And that's also something that is often in people's model release forms, just to say, once the edit's been done, you have this long after sending to review it and make any changes and blah, blah, blah. I never do that personally. If someone else wants to check my edit before I post it, I'm happy to send it for them to check. But I never ask to check anyone else's. I think normally there's nothing that's been filmed on the day that I would be uncomfortable being posted. So I don't need to check. I think in general as well, there has to be a little bit of grace awarded to people. I think everyone wants to create and post good quality content. So they're not trying to make me look bad. I'm not trying to make them look bad. We just want to post a video that looks hot and conveys the fun that we had on the day. And I trust that the other person is as invested in doing that as I am. If there's a specific moment that someone wants to keep out of the footage for whatever reason, if they just look through it and they think, oh, I really don't like, these 5 seconds, I think that should be respected. But as a general rule, there is an expectation that the majority of the content that was filmed will be published. It's worth having a conversation as well once someone arrives or beforehand about just the kind of smaller logistical things about how you like to film. Some people, if you don't have a cameraman and you're just setting up with a tripod and different angles and things, some people like to have angles all around the room. I find that a bit overwhelming and I don't like it when you can see a camera in the background of another camera. I prefer to have one main angle in front, sometimes a ceiling camera. If someone wants to set up a third, that's okay. Sometimes using a third just for POV is good, just to kind of move around and literally lift up as and when if you want to get a close up. Sometimes even without the ceiling camera is good, just one angle and then one POV and that's it. Some people just do one angle, some people do multiple. That's something to negotiate and figure out by yourself. I would say the more angles you have, the longer your edit will take and the higher the likelihood is that there'll be some angles you just don't use at all. For me, because I mostly film in my bedroom, I know now which angles look good, which lighting looks good, and when I'm filming, I'm thinking about how to perform to those angles and make sure that I'm positioning us in a direction that means the camera is capturing those things. Possibly if I had like 20 cameras around the room, I would have to think less about that, but it feels like a bit of a waste to me because like 99% of that footage is going to be unused. The thing about editing is that because people have different types of content, it might be that the edits need to be slightly different as well. They might want to tailor it to their specific audience that focuses more on a certain act or keeps in more angles that focus on that one person. There are also just aesthetic preferences. Some people like to have long scenes of build up of kissing. Other people prefer to keep it snappier. I think that's why there can be some benefit to doing your own individual edit if you feel like you want to tailor your edit to your audience's preferences. The conversation that should happen before you both leave is about when the video will be posted. So as I mentioned in my admin video, I always have a really big backlog, which means that sometimes I film with someone and then the video won't be posted for months and months and months. So for me, I'm always happy to say to the other person, you can post this whenever you want. If you want to wait for me and post it at the same time, because there is a benefit to that in some ways, then you're more than welcome to. And in that case, I will update them about when that might be, and I'll let them know when my edit is done, which is normally a few months before. And if they want to synchronize that, they're more than welcome to, but there's no expectation that they will, because obviously that would mean asking them to wait a really long time to post it. Some people always really want to sync the videos, and that's fine. But again, you just need to have that negotiation at some point to make sure that you're both on the same page. The same thing goes for promoting the video in other ways. So it might be that one person wants to get home from the collab and literally straight away post a picture of you together saying, we filmed today, which the other person might not be comfortable with or might be happy to do it, but might not want to repost it. And there's just various preferences and ways of doing things. Again, have that conversation, but my overarching recommendation on this is that some of those things really don't matter that much. So don't overthink it. If someone does something that you're not happy with or you're not comfortable with or that you feel like wasn't discussed, then reach out in a friendly way and ask them if it can be rectified in some way. But just be kind. Just be kind. It always comes back to just being kind. Okay, I feel like I've been rambling for a really long time. As I said, I'm really interested to get your feedback about all of this. I've been talking for ages and I've covered a lot of stuff, but also I must have missed things. Are there any really glaring omissions that I've made in the course of this video that you just think during a collaboration, whether that's arranging it beforehand or during or after, are there things that I should have mentioned? Are there things that I've got wrong? The things that you agree really strongly with or disagree really strongly with? I would really like to hear that. As I said, if you're a creator or if you're someone who enjoys watching porn or enjoys watching different creators, I'd like to know your opinions about this as well. If you have any comments or questions about anything from this video or any suggestions for topics for future videos, I'd also really love to hear those. So please put them in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. My username is pretty much the same in most places. It's the same as my YouTube name. So edf2mxxx. On Instagram, just take off the extra X because you can't have 3 X's in your username on Instagram. Feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time.